Hi friends, and welcome to another relaxing history audiobook. Tonight we examine why statistically you'd likely have been a slave in Rome and explore the dark underbelly of Roman society. We step back 2,000 years into an empire that dazzled the world with its marble, its roads, its armies, and yet beneath it all was built on human bondage. Here's the truth. If you were alive in the Roman Empire, chances are you would not be a senator or a general or even a free citizen. You would have been a slave. Captured in war, born into bondage, sold in a market, forced to serve without choice, without rights, without escape. It is a history as brutal as it is unbelievable. Rome, at its height, enslaved millions, half the population in some regions. Their labor powered the villas, the mines, the armies, the temples. Their suffering was everywhere, even if marble statues tried to hide it. So let's begin our journey. We'll walk through Roman streets, enter the villas, descend into the mines, and listen to the voices that survived. It is not a comfortable story, but it is the real one, and by the end, you may find yourself grateful that you were not born into that world. Chapter 1. The Scale of Enslavement. The first light of dawn finds you wandering through the silent streets of ancient Rome. The air is cool and still, carrying a faint hint of wood smoke from hearths being lit. The sky above is a gentle purple, softening to pink as morning approaches. Your sandals brush quietly over the stone road, the sound echoing between rows of sleeping insulae and shuttered shop fronts. In this early hush, only a few souls are awake and moving. Ahead, an old slave in a threadbare tunic sweeps dust from a tavern doorway, his broom whispering over the stones. Further along, a young girl balances 2 clay jugs on her hips as she walks to the public fountain. She shivers in the dawn chill of her thin linen dress and waits for each jug to fill, the splashing water loud in the stillness. One by one, more figures emerge from shadowy doorways, nearly all of them enslaved people beginning their chores before the city fully stirs. As the light grows, Rome's outline becomes clearer around you. Grand marble temples and great bathhouses still lie mostly quiet, but their upkeep has already begun. Down one street, you glimpse the glow of an oven inside a bakery and catch the warm scent of bread rising. Enslaved bakers have been up for hours kneading dough and tending the fire, though customers have yet to arrive. At a crossroads, a creaking water cart rolls past, pulled by mules. Following behind are a small crew of municipal slaves, ready to sprinkle the road and keep down the dust once morning traffic begins. 2 young boys trot after the cart carrying baskets of fresh bread. Iron collars glint around their necks in the early sunlight. They hurry by with eyes lowered, focused on their task. Even at this gentle hour, Rome's vast machinery of daily labor is already in motion, powered almost entirely by the hands of the enslaved. The scale of enslavement in this city is immense, yet woven so seamlessly into everyday life that it often passes without remark. It is said nearly 1 in 3 people walking these streets lives in bondage, serving someone else's needs. Even modest households might own a slave or 2, while the wealthiest families command dozens or even hundreds. The emperor himself is attended by an army of enslaved servants scattered across his palaces and estates. Everywhere you look, from the lowliest shop to the halls of power, the work of society is being carried out quietly by those who have no freedom to refuse it. Leaving the city walls behind, you walk along a dusty country road as the sun climbs higher into a clear blue sky. The countryside unfurls in gentle hills of olive groves and grain fields. In those fields, lines of enslaved workers are already hard at work. On one slope, a group of men and women moves down a row of vines, pruning leaves and checking grape clusters still wet with dew. They drop bunches of early grapes into wicker baskets at their feet. Not far off, across a golden wheat field, Another group bends low, cutting stalks with sickles and gathering them into sheaves. The murmur of their activity and the occasional caw of a crow are the only sounds in the still morning air. An overseer on horseback watches from a distance, a coiled whip resting against his saddle. He does not need to crack it. A stern glance or a clearing of his throat is enough to keep the weary labourers focused. What looks serene and pastoral from afar is up close, sustained by countless aching backs and calloused hands, toiling under the same rising sun. In the hills beyond these farms, enslaved men toil in quarries and mines, hewing marble and ore by the dim glow of oil lamps. By midday, you find yourself back in the city, where life has reached its noisy peak. The forums and markets are crowded with shoppers and vendors. Under bright awnings, merchants hawk their wares as their enslaved assistants fetch goods, weigh produce, and tally coins. At the public baths nearby, steam begins to billow above the roofs as fires are stoked in the hypercausts below the pools. In those furnace rooms, slaves shovel wood into the flames, their skins slick with sweat in the stifling heat. Every comfort the city enjoys, the hot baths, the cooked meals, the clean laundry and lamplight at dusk, is tended by unseen hands working tirelessly in the background. In an affluent residential quarter, the pattern continues behind closed doors. Past the gate of a grand domus, an elderly Greek slave leads his young master through an afternoon lesson. His voice is low and patient as he recites lines of poetry, guiding the boy through each verse of Homer. In the kitchen across the courtyard, other slaves quietly prepare the household's meal. One stirs a pot of lentils over the hearth, while another kneads dough for bread, their hands moving in practiced silence. The masters of the house scarcely notice the flurry of activity sustaining their comfort, yet an entire world of servitude hums along softly within their walls. As the sun drifts lower in the sky, a golden light washes over the city and countryside, bringing a gradual hush. The long workday wanes at last. Outside the city, field slaves set down their tools and straighten their stiff backs. With dusk approaching, they trudge back toward their barracks in small, weary groups. Their shadowed figures pass under olive trees and along the edges of fields they will return to when the next dawn breaks. In Rome, shopkeepers shutter their stalls and the busy streets fall quiet. In the grand house you visited earlier, lamps are lit as twilight descends. The tutor rolls up his scrolls, and the kitchen slaves serve a simple supper to the household before eating their own meagre portions by the warmth of the hearth. After cleaning the last dish and sweeping the kitchen one final time, a few servants step out into the small back courtyard. For a moment they linger there, breathing the cool evening air and watching the first stars appear. Their shoulders slump with exhaustion, but quiet relief softens their faces now that no orders will come until morning. Dusk deepens, and a gentle hush spreads over the empire. At midnight, you listen to Rome at rest. A soft breeze rustles through the cypress and cedar branches, carrying the distant trickle of a fountain. On a far-off farm, the slave barracks lies dark and silent under the stars, while in the city, a tiny attic window goes black as an exhausted serving girl blows out her lamp and lies down to sleep. From opulent urban villas to lonely frontier outposts, enslaved people everywhere finally find a brief reprieve in the embrace of night. Under the same sky, free and enslaved alike share the silence, though for those in bondage this peace is especially precious. Breathing the cool air, you feel the weight of all those hidden lives that normally fade into the background. In the stillness, the vast scale of their bondage becomes achingly clear. And in that quiet, a gentle calm envelops you. as the ancient world pauses to draw its breath before the next dawn. Chapter 2. The Marketplace of Flesh. The noise reaches you before the sight, a low roar of bargaining, the clink of iron, canvas awnings snapping in hot wind. You step into a Roman Empire market square where raised wooden platforms stand under striped shade. Men, women and children wait, bound at the ankles, faces guarded. A trader in a red-dyed tunic lifts a staff and calls for silence. His assistant loops a placard over a thin Greek boy's neck. Healthy, Greek, literate. You watch the man turn the child slowly, straight legs, clear eyes, steady posture, while buyers in tunics murmur and calculate aloud. Nearby, captives from the northern frontier, pale-skinned Gauls with straw-coloured hair, shift uneasily in chain-gang pairs. A burly farmer pushes forward, pries open a tall youth's mouth and studies his teeth like a horse. The youth's jaw tightens. The farmer prods shoulder and thigh, testing muscle as the crowd murmurs. A separate row holds women of varied ages. Some cradle infants, others cup hands over their breasts, trying for modesty. Buyers tug hair to judge health, pinch forearms for firmness, and turn wrists to check scars. A nobleman's steward points at a dark-eyed Syrian. His master nods, expression cool. The trader shakes his head at the child in her arms. Purchase must be separate. An assistant pulls the infant free. The mother's lips tremble, but she makes no sound. The steward counts denarii into the trader's palm, while the woman watches her baby carried away toward another platform. On a low stool sits an older man with grey stubble and lash scars fading across his shoulders. A board reads, "Skilled cook, sauces, breads." A veiled matron appraises him like pottery. Her maid whispers. The matron nods. The cook lowers his eyes, already returning in imagination to a kitchen. Across the square, a scribe for sale demonstrates a neat hand on a wax tablet. He writes a buyer's name, blows gently, and smiles faintly without showing teeth. Another captive holds up iron tongs and a hammer, proof of blacksmith skill. He taps a nail straight into a plank to quiet doubters. Placards dangle from iron collars and leather thongs. Shepherd, muleteer, cleaner of drains, quarryman, tutor, hairdresser, midwife. You read crude inscriptions scratched into neck rings. Hold me, lest I flee. If found, return to Marcus. The collars gleam under the sun. Practical advertisements and warnings combined. Small flies settle, then lift again, slowly. At the market edge stands a bucket of water, another of oil. Buyers wet skin to see true colour beneath grime. They rub oil to make muscles shine. An older trader lifts a tunic hem, showing a scar he assures is long-healed. A physician nods, bored but thorough. Contracts are hammered out in public. An assistant tallies price on a tablet. Coins clink into bronze scales. A seal ring presses a blob of warm wax. A witness recites the terms: origin, age, skills, any guarantees. The buyer receives a receipt. The captive receives a rope around the neck. You notice interpreters weaving through the crowd, switching tongues easily: Greek, Punic, Gaulish, Latin, repeating questions, translating boasts, softening insults. Misunderstanding can ruin a sale. A boy repeats literate in 3 languages with practiced clarity. A woman answers where she was taken. A coastal village after a raid. No surviving kin. Season matters. After campaigns, convoys arrive and prices drop. In lean years they rise. A rumour spreads that a ship anchored at the river port carries 200 Cappadocians. Buyers drift toward the street that leads there. Traders grin. Competition will be fierce at tomorrow's auction by the wharf. Security is present but discreet. Market guards with vinewood staves lean in the shade, watching for fights, cut purses, or panicked breakaways. A youth tries to bolt. A guard hooks his staff through the rope looped at the captive's collar and drags him back gently, almost indulgently, like straying livestock. You pass a bench where irons are fitted and checked. A smith measures wrist and ankle, rivets chain links and tests hinges with a practiced twist. Keys jangle at his belt. Above him hangs a board of rental gear, neck forks, rope, manacles, priced for buyers who plan long journeys tomorrow. A young woman removes her sandals when ordered. A buyer inspects the soles of her feet for thick callus, proof she is accustomed to hard work and long days. Another buyer asks her to lift a basket of sand. She raises it to shoulder height with a tight, indifferent expression. One trader stages demonstrations. The blacksmith bends a bar round a stake. The muleteer leads a stubborn animal in a circle without a switch. A tutor reads a line of Homer in a steady voice and passes each word. Applause breaks out, embarrassed and brief, and quickly dies. Two men from a rural estate examine a group of strong youths together, planning to buy in bulk. The trader offers a discount and a length of chain to link the march. He throws in rough cloaks for rain. The estate men grin. Economies of scale are their profession. A man with careful hands studies a girl's hairline for lice, checks fingernails, and asks about menstruation. His wife evaluates for household tasks. Their faces are neutral, professional. They are not cruel, merely efficient. Your stomach turns anyway. They thank the trader, confer quietly, and mark a slate with figures. Around midday, the heat presses down. Water sellers shout, dogs lick dust, the platforms creak, chains bite, buyers bargain harder in the glare. You notice a placard at the office. Defects declared within period may be returned. A clerk yawns and scratches figures with a stylus, indifferent to suffering. At the square's edge, a tax official in a clean tunic oversees a table. He records purchases for levy, stamps a ticket, and holds out a palm. The buyer pays with a sigh. Two scribes, also enslaved, keep the ledger neat, sand drying the ink while they avoid the official's eyes. By late afternoon the crowd thins. A few captives slump on their platforms, swaying from fatigue. Unsold stock is led under deeper shade and sprinkled with water like wilting vegetables. Traders count purses. A stray dog noses a discarded heel of bread and carries it proudly into an alley. A rope coffle forms. 6 buyers, 12 bodies, 1 lead mule. Tools are handed out to identify destinations. Mallet, crook, stylus case, kitchen ladle. An overseer checks knots and spacing. The line twitches forward, awkward and resigned, already learning the choreography of walking together, with no one setting the pace. Dusk softens the square. Awnings are tied down, platforms empty. Coiled chains lie like sleeping snakes. The child you noticed earlier sits alone at the edge of a stage, staring at his toes. A trader's wife brings him a cup of watered wine. He drinks without lifting his eyes. Night gathers. Lamps glow on iron posts. Moths beat at the flames. The day's voices fade to a hush. A brush sweeping boards. A last ledger closed. A gate bar dropped. You feel the heat bleed from the stones and the air grow gentle. Breathing slows. The market sleeps. So do you. Chapter 3. Life in the Villa. You step through the tall bronze gates of a Roman villa. The clamour of the city fades, replaced by stillness broken only by the trickle of water in a marble fountain. Painted walls shimmer with bright frescoes of gods, but the entire house runs on quiet, unseen servitude. In the atrium, a thin boy crouches on his knees beside the fountain, scrubbing mosaic tiles with a stiff brush. His hands are raw, his shoulders hunched, his eyes downcast. Sunlight pours through the open roof, illuminating patterns of dolphins and vines beneath his brush. He works without pause or comment. Nearby, a young slave girl polishes a bronze basin until it shines faintly with her reflection. Her hair is bound with twine, her tunic plain and grey. When her master passes through in a white toga, she lowers her gaze instantly, clutching the basin tightly against her chest, lips pressed tight. From a corridor, another slave appears, staggering under the weight of a tall amphora of water balanced on one shoulder. He walks slowly, sweat beading on his forehead, sandals scraping the stone floor. Behind him follows a girl balancing a tray of bread and olives, eyes fixed low as she walks. In the study, the master's son sits at a low desk, while his enslaved Greek tutor unfurls a papyrus scroll. The tutor's calm voice recites a line of Homer in measured tones, guiding the child through each verse. The boy frowns, stumbling over syllables, while the tutor's finger moves steadily across the page. The tutor's robe is patched at the sleeves, his sandals worn thin. Knowledge fills his voice, yet he owns nothing. His memories, his learning, even his voice belong to the household. He imparts the epics of heroes and gods to a boy destined for freedom that he himself will never taste. Deeper inside, the women's quarters are alive with quiet activity. The matron reclines on a couch while enslaved maids move about her swiftly. One brushes her long black hair smooth. Another twists it into careful braids. A third secures golden pins. Their faces are tense, their eyes fixed, desperate not to falter. One girl, barely 14, leans forward on tiptoe to clasp a pearl necklace around her mistress's throat. Her fingers tremble slightly. She swallows, praying the clasp does not slip. The matron does not notice. To her, the hands at her throat are tools, as ordinary as the pins and jewels themselves. From the kitchen comes the clang of pots and the sharp crackle of fire. A stout cook stirs a steaming pot with a wooden spoon, the smell of lentils and herbs heavy in the smoky air. A woman kneads dough at a stone counter, her arms dusted white with flour. Another polishes a serving platter until it gleams, then sets it aside for the feast ahead. By evening, the dining hall glows with lamplight. The master and his guests recline on couches, sipping wine, laughing softly, and gesturing expansively. In the shadows move dozens of enslaved attendants. One pours wine into silver cups, another clears plates, a boy kneels with a basin washing a guest's hands carefully. Musicians play softly in the corner. One strums a lute, another plucks a lyre. Their eyes remain fixed on the strings, their expressions weary but controlled. A young girl sways in slow dance before the couches, her face blank, her movements precise. The laughter of free men fills the air. As the feast stretches late into the night, slaves move constantly, filling dishes, stoking lamps, carrying trays. No one thanks them. A guest waves impatiently at a servant who spills wine. The boy trembles as he mops the table. The laughter resumes, swallowing the moment as though it never occurred. Finally, the guests retire. The triclinium lies in disarray, crumbs, wine stains, scraps of food scattered on mosaics. The master departs without a word. Slaves descend upon the room, sweeping floors, scrubbing surfaces, gathering bones and fruit peels into baskets. The soft swish of brooms replaces the laughter that filled the hall. In the kitchen, embers glow red as hands scour blackened pots. A girl pours dirty water into the drain, steam rising faintly. The air smells of ashes and grease. The slaves' faces sag with fatigue, but their movements remain practiced. They tidy each vessel and shelf before leaving the room spotless. Only now are they free to climb the narrow stairs to the attic quarters. The ceiling beams slope low, the air is warm and close. Straw mats lie scattered across the floor, each claimed by a weary body. The space is crowded, voices hushed. The day's labour weighs heavy on them all. In one corner, a young boy hums softly as he rocks a baby sister, the child of another slave, so she will not cry and wake the masters below. His face is solemn, his voice low, but the tune is gentle. The baby's breathing slows. The boy leans back, eyes finally closing. An older man tells a story of his homeland to a small group. His hands move as he speaks, describing hills and rivers far away. For a moment, tired faces brighten in the glow of a flickering oil lamp. Laughter rises softly, fragile but real, in the stifling attic air. Despite exhaustion, the attic buzzes briefly with quiet conversation. Two young women whisper about their families. A boy jokes weakly, drawing tired smiles. For a brief hour they exist, not as tools but as people, laughing, grieving, remembering. Then silence settles, and the crowded room drifts gradually into heavy, dreamless sleep. Outside, the villa courtyard lies under the night sky. Stars scatter across the dark, reflected faintly in the fountain's water. The air is cool now, carrying the scent of rosemary. Shadows fall across silent colonnades. No voices rise. The grand house sleeps, its luxury resting on the hidden lives above. The lamps are extinguished one by one. Windows darken. The city murmurs faintly in the distance, but within the villa there is only peace. You listen to the fountain's soft trickle. The air feels calm, heavy, and still. The villa drifts into slumber, and you too are carried slowly toward sleep. Chapter 4. The Latifundia, Fields of Misery. You leave the walls of Rome behind, following a dusty road into the countryside. Hills open wide before you, covered with vineyards, olive groves, and grain fields stretching to the horizon. At first glance it looks peaceful, golden under the morning sun. But this calm masks the harsh engine of Rome's wealth. Closer, the fields reveal lines of men and women bent low over the soil. They are slaves of the latifundia, vast agricultural estates owned by senators and magnates. Shackled gangs move in rhythm, guided by the sharp eyes of overseers on horseback. Whips coil loosely in their hands, ready at any moment. The work begins before dawn. In vineyards, slaves prune vines, tying shoots with rough twine. Their fingers are cut and stained by sap. Some carry wicker baskets already heavy with grapes. Sunlight has barely touched the horizon, yet sweat glistens on their brows. Silence reigns except for the calls of birds overhead. Beyond the vines lies a sea of wheat. Rows of figures swing sickles in unison, cutting stalks and binding them into sheaves. Each motion repeats endlessly, shoulders and backs straining. Dust clings to skin and tunics. The sound of iron against stalks fills the air, broken by a horseman's barked command. In olive groves, pickers climb ladders, shaking branches with hooked poles. Olives rain down onto cloth spread below. Some workers stumble as they descend, clutching bruised knees, but no pause is allowed. Overseers tally baskets with practiced glances. The fruit will be pressed into oil, feeding trade and empire alike. Harshest of all are the chains. Some gangs are shackled ankle to ankle, forced to move together down the rows. If one stumbles, all stumble. If one falters, the whip cracks, punishing the line as a whole. Their collars bear iron tags inscribed with their master's name in case of flight. Meals are meager. Coarse bread, beans, a little water. They eat squatting in the dirt, eyes fixed on bowls, fearful of wasting time. Then the work resumes under the burning noon sun. Shade is rare. Cloaks are forbidden. Backs bend again, legs ache, hands blister. The day stretches endlessly forward. You notice the overseers, free men or trusted slaves, circling constantly. Some sit tall on horses, scanning for idleness. Others stride with rods in hand. They count baskets, note progress, and enforce quotas. Their eyes sweep every corner of the field. Any pause, any glance skyward, is met with swift rebuke. Punishments are brutal. A slave who drops a tool may be struck across the shoulders. One who refuses work is chained overnight, left hungry. Runaways are branded with hot irons across the forehead. Tales whisper of crucifixions along the road, grim reminders to all who labor under the watchful sun. Children are not spared. Boys fetch water jars, tripping under their weight. Girls gather scattered stalks, fingers bleeding from sharp husks. Too small for heavy labor, they are trained to endure smaller tasks until they grow. No childhood laughter rings here, only the dull scrape of work and the cries of crows. In the presses, men turn heavy beams to crush grapes and olives. Sweat pours from their bodies as they strain against the wood. The juice runs into clay vats. The air is pungent with fermenting fruit. Their muscles tremble with exhaustion, but the overseer's eyes never soften. The beams must turn. Storage barns loom nearby. Inside, slaves haul sacks of grain onto platforms, stacking them carefully. Dust swirls with every movement, clogging lungs. In the dimness, figures stoop under burdens nearly their own weight. The barns echo with coughing. A dropped sack bursts, spilling grain, and a terrified boy scrambles to gather every kernel. The latifundia thrive on scale. Hundreds labor here, unseen except by those who profit. Their sweat fills amphorae with oil, granaries with grain, and cellars with wine. These goods flow to the city, sustaining Rome's population and armies. Behind the empire's marble face lie endless fields watered with human misery. Evening brings no true rest. When the sun lowers, slaves drag themselves to crude barracks, long huts of mud brick with straw roofs. Inside, wooden planks serve as beds. Bodies collapse side by side, shackles clinking. A handful murmur softly to one another, but exhaustion silences most. Sleep is a necessity, not comfort. Disease stalks the barracks. Air is close, fleas bite, and wounds fester without medicine. A cough spreads quickly from one body to another. If a slave falls too weak to work, they are cast aside, left in a corner until death claims them. Life is expendable when replacements arrive constantly from wars. Yet fragments of resilience remain. A woman hums a tune from her homeland while rocking a child to sleep. A man whispers prayers in Greek before closing his eyes. In stolen moments, culture and memory survive. They carry scraps of identity into the long night, faint sparks in the suffocating dark. The overseers rest well fed in their own quarters. The masters dine in luxury in distant villas or in the city, never setting foot among the fields. They toast their profits, oblivious to the aching backs that made them possible. Their wealth rests on chains stretching farther than the eye can see. At night, the fields fall silent. The moon glimmers faintly on the stubble of cut grain. Olive trees cast black silhouettes across the earth. Bats flit through the dark, their wings whispering in the stillness. In the barracks, groans subside to steady breathing. The estate slumbers, waiting for another dawn of labor. The stars shimmer cold above. They look the same to the free and the enslaved, distant and untouchable. For those bound to the latifundia, the stars are reminders of freedom lost, an endless sky they may never cross. Yet still they shine, indifferent, over fields of sorrow stretching to the horizon. You linger in the hush, hearing only the sigh of wind through the trees. The empire's wealth lies heavy on the land, harvested by hands that will never taste liberty. Night deepens, shadows spread, and silence gathers. Slowly, softly, the darkness folds over the fields, and your mind drifts toward rest. Chapter 5. The Mines of Death. The road to the mine runs through a scarred valley in the Roman Empire, where hills are gashed open like wounds. Spoil heaps glow pale under the morning sun. Even from afar the air tastes metallic, touched by sulphur smoke drifting from squat smelting furnaces along the ridge. Closer, a mining camp sprawls beside black tailings. Low sheds, timber cranes, carts with cracked wheels. Enslaved men and condemned criminals queue at a shaft mouth, iron collars dull against dust-caked skin. Overseers in leather caps check tallies on wax tablets, then wave each gang forward with a curt flick of the hand. At the rim, you peer into a mouth of darkness braced with rough-cut beams. A hemp rope creaks over a pulley. A basket rises dripping, the night crew's waterhole, then sinks again with a hoarse shout. Oil lamps bob below like weak stars. Heat and stone dust breathe up from the hole. Descent begins by ladder, slick rungs, tarred rope, lamp clenched in teeth. The shaft narrows, timbered and wet. Sweat crawls instantly. In the first gallery, men stoop and shuffle sideways, shoulders scraping the wall. Picks peck, wedges squeal. Dust hangs like fog, and every breath rasps the throat raw. Children crawl where grown men cannot. Small bodies worm through rat holes with woven baskets, scooping ore chips by feel. A boy wriggles backward, face black, eyes rimmed with pale rings where tears cut mud. Above him, a miner steadies a shaking prop. The roof ticks like a dying clock. Ventilation is a rumor. A slave fans air down a side shaft with a plaited mat. Another feeds charcoal to a brazier, coaxing a current. Smoke slithers along the roof and cold air follows barely. Lamps sputter, their tongues shrinking. Someone coughs until he retches, wipes his mouth and swings again. Water creeps from everywhere. Leather buckets pass hand to hand in a chain, slopping into a sump where a wooden wheel turns slowly. Two men tread inside the wheel to lift the flood-up pipes toward daylight. Their calves burn. The squeal of axles gnaws at the ears without pause. At the face, iron bites rock. Miners heat a seam with brushwood fires, then douse it. The stone screams and splits. Hammers and wedges follow, ringing in close quarters. Broken ore tumbles to feet. A runner shovels it into a leather bag and disappears down a chute toward the shaft. Timber props pop like bones when they fail. Once in a while the ceiling sighs, dust whispers from a crack, and everybody goes still as a lizard. An overseer raises a finger. Listen. The rock decides. Today, a groan, a shower of grit, a reprieve. Tomorrow may bury a dozen. Punishment is built into the earth here. Many wear shackles at the ankle. The chain clinks with every step. New brands blister on foreheads. Letters burned by a hot iron, proof of crime or ownership. A man with one blind eye chips carefully, counting blows under his breath to hold steady. Shifts blur. Dawn and dusk mean little underground. Only oil tells time. When lamps shrink to blue pins, there is a scramble for wick and fat. A boy with a smoked pot crawls through, relighting flames with a reed. In the thin light, faces bloom from darkness like ghosts and recede again. A narrow tunnel plunges toward a furnace chamber. There, bare-backed men feed ore and charcoal into domed hearths. Twin bellows wheeze under slave feet, pumping heat until the hearths roar white. The air stings the eyes, sweat boils off skin. Slag runs like black honey into waiting clay molds. Lead smoke rolls in greasy sheets. The furnace master wraps his mouth with wool, strips of vinegar-soaked cloth. It barely helps. Teeth ache with the taste of metal. A youth staggers out to vomit, returns at a glare. On a bench, tongs, moulds, and a tally stick lie ready for the next pour. Beyond the furnaces, a yard of grey slag pyramids into cairns. Broken amphorae, scorched shovels, splintered sled runners. A pair of oxen doze in yokes while a team drags carts loaded with ingots toward the road. A clerk scratches figures in wax. Sand dries the numbers and wind erases footprints. At the shaft mouth, a treadwheel crane creaks. Two slaves climb inside the wheel and walk, lifting a basket of ore to daylight. Another team lowers a man with a rope girdle and a lamp clenched in his teeth. He vanishes like a swallowed word. The wheel thumps steadily on. Accidents count time better than sundials. A shout, a snap, a rumble. A gallery folds and the lamps wink. When dust clears, bodies lie under shattered beams, hands protruding, fingers still curled around picks. The overseer notes losses on his tablet, then taps new names. Replacements will arrive with the next convoy. Food is rationed by measure, not mercy. Barley porridge, onions, a cup of sour wine. On good days, a scrap of salted fish. Men eat squatting in a circle on warm stone, too tired to speak. A woman passes with a brazier to relight dying lamps and moves on without looking up. Night on the surface brings little calm. The camp rings with small noises, a file on iron, a cough under a blanket, the slow drip from a laundered tunic. Barrack huts hold rows of bodies on plank beds. Feet are chained to iron bars. Dreams turn in place like oxen at a press. Disease blooms in close air. Eyes redden, gums blacken, lungs fill. A man wakes coughing blood, wraps it in his blanket and goes to work anyway. The dead go out on carts before dawn. Shallow trenches wait beyond the slag heaps. A wooden marker leans, its name already weathering into nothing. Some pray between swings. A Greek mutters to Hermes. A woman traces a sign from her village with chalk on a beam. A Gaul ties a wolf's tooth to his cord and touches it before lowering into the shaft. Tiny rituals stand like reeds against a river that never stops. And yet there are flashes of skill that border on grace. A pick placed just so sings, a wedge hums, and a whole slab lets go. Two men time their blows like a heartbeat. Ore falls and a brief smile passes between them, a private victory in a place that steals names. The overseers eat apart, their stew thicker, their wine less watered. They play at dice under a lantern and laugh, then walk the lines with rods tucked under their arms. They fear the dark too, though they will not say it. More than one sleeps with a lamp burning by his feet. Dusk returns with furnace glow licking the sky. The valley looks like a low volcano field, breath smoking from 100 mouths. Carts creak away, bearing ingots stamped with a magistrate's mark. In Rome, those marks will become pipe and roof, coin and curse, crumbs of empire melted from buried night. When true night settles, the hiss of cooling slag fades. The wheel thumps slower, then stops. Stars prick the black above the ridge. Down in the shafts, the last lamps go out, one by one, tiny suns snuffed by fingers. The valley exhales. In the dark, breath lengthens. Sleep gathers like ash. Chapter 6. Chains of Entertainment. You arrive at a Roman Empire amphitheatre before sunrise. The oval bowl is empty, the sand dark and cool. Enslaved cleaners rake furrows, sprinkle water from leather buckets and repair low barriers. Others drag nets and posts from storage. Chains clink softly. A foreman checks a schedule painted on wood. Behind the arena, the gladiator barracks hum. In the practice yard, pairs move slowly with wooden swords under a trainer's watch. Leather helmets muffle breath. A boy applies oil to a veteran's back, tracing old scars. Armourers set out greaves, belts and shields, while a cook stirs barley porridge. You study equipment stacked along a wall, the Murmillo's heavy shield and fishcrest helmet, the Thrakes' small shield and curved seeker, the Retiarius' net, trident and bare head. Enslaved attendants test straps, mend net cords, and weigh helmets in their palms, guessing at fatigue long before the gate opens. The Lanista, owner of the school, walks the line with a staff. Doctors correct footwork with taps to shins and shoulders. Men repeat drills until motion looks like memory. A medic mixes vinegar and ash in a bowl for cuts. Another lays out splints, needles and crude cups for bleeding. Breakfast is barley, beans, dried fruit, and a draught of ash water thought to harden bone. Hands reach for bowls, then for whetstones. A scribe pins today's match bill to a door. Pairings, rules, sponsor's name. Someone kisses a charm. Someone mutters a short oath to Mars, quiet and private. By mid-morning the crowd arrives. Enslaved vendors climb steps with trays of dates, cheese and warm wine. A brass tablet near the gate lists the program. Beasts in the morning, executions at midday, gladiators in the afternoon. Officials check tickets, sailors unroll the velarium awning, cooling half the seats. The opening procession enters to reed pipes and horns. Standard bearers lead. The editor, robed and ringed, acknowledges cheers. Gladiators circle slowly, saluting. The sand is smooth, almost pretty under light. You notice hands shaking slightly under shields. An assistant rakes lines at center to mark distance, then steps back. Beast hunts begin. Cages roll on creaking wheels. Enslaved beaters with spears jog behind scenery screens, driving animals toward hidden gates. Hunters in light armor enter with javelins and bows. Trapdoors open. Sand erupts. A boar bursts out, tusks wet. Nets flick. Ropes snap taut. The crowd exhales together. Midday draws darker spectacles. Condemned criminals and enslaved rebels are costumed as figures from myth. Wardrobe slaves lace greaves, fix masks and paint faces. Stagehands build a fake grove, a cave, a ship's prow. Horns call. The rituals proceed with ceremony and distance. You watch without leaning forward. The afternoon brings matched pairs. Trumpets sound, and two men step from opposite gates at a slow walk. A referee raises a staff between them. Shields kiss the sand. The first exchange is exploratory. Short steps, probing feints. The retire of a trident point. The crowd's mutter becomes steady surf. Movements settle into pattern. The Retiarius circles, casting the net high to distract. The Murmillo answers with a rush behind his curved scutum. Bronze rings tap, leather creaks, sand hisses under feet. A gash opens, and the referee stops them, gesturing to bind it. Attendants hurry in with bandages. A fighter tires and lifts one finger, seeking missio, the plea for mercy. The referee asks the editor. Hands in the stands tilt flat or close. The sponsor hesitates. Today the signal grants life. A horn sounds. Attendants pull contestants apart and press palms against their chests to steady breath. Victory has a shape. The winner receives a palm branch and a purse. A crown touches his hair. His trainer smiles thinly. Two enslaved boys rake smooth the torn sand, erasing prints and blood. The defeated is led out past surgeons' benches toward stitches. 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 Work as endless as applause. Some names circulate like charms. A Thracian with 16 crowns who fought for years. Flama, offered the wooden sword of freedom and returning anyway to the gate. Stories pass between seats, part rumour, part ledger. Inscriptions scratched on walls outside record pairings and odds, like small prayers to fortune. Women have fought here, rarely. The record survives in whispers and a few scratched figures, helmets with plumes, short greaves, a crooked smile in stone. Dwarfs have faced each other for laughter alone. Spectacle stretches to fill desire, and desire is a purse that opens easily when drums begin. You walk the ring and notice machines under the seats. Enslaved crews work winches and counterweights to raise scenery from pits. A trapdoor sighs and a platform rises carrying painted trees. Scent burners swing, releasing cinnamon smoke. Above, sailor riggers haul ropes to adjust the awning in slow, synchronized pulls. Beyond a timber screen, animal keepers water cages. A leopard paces, tail lashing. A bear snuffles at a bucket. Keepers, many enslaved, repair gates with iron pins and check lashings with practiced touch. Lists hang on pegs. Feed weights, release times, handlers' names, penalties for error. The handwriting is neat. After sunset, the city's other entertainments open their doors. Lanterns mark the Lupana, the brothel where tokens buy time and anonymity. Enslaved women and men wait behind painted curtains, faces composed like masks. A chalked price list hangs by the door. The street smells of oil, smoke and wine. At private houses, wealthy diners summon performers. Enslaved musicians tune kitharas, pipers moisten reeds, dancers knot skirts. Comic actors rehearse rude mimes. A host directs an enslaved girl to sit by a guest and smile. The law calls her property. The room treats her as furniture that breathes. The circus whitens with dust at dawn. Teams thunder past the spiner while the crowd chants colors: blue, green, red, white. Stable slaves sponge horses, rub legs with vinegar, and whisper to jittery teams at the line. An auriga wraps reins around his waist. A stable boy knots the knife for cutting free. Vendors, often enslaved, carry baskets of nuts and dates. Bookmakers' slaves take wagers, scribbling names on wax. Pickpockets work steps, market guards prowl, water sellers pour from leather bags. The awning bellies and snaps in the wind like a sail. Somewhere a chorus begins a song everyone knows already. The myths are elastic. Plays speak of noble duels. Poets make gladiators into lovers. Funerary reliefs show fighters crowned by victory. In truth, many were enslaved, some volunteers, most bound by oath and debt. Stones remember the names, scratched, painted, carved. Small shrines bloom with lamps after a favorite falls. Evening cool returns to the amphitheater. Enslaved crews coil ropes, scrub benches, and sweep the last husks from the steps. In the barracks, medics stitch without hurry, while armor is wiped and stacked. A boy hangs nets to dry. Another oils a trident, each time glimmering like dull moonlight. Night settles gently. The velarium ropes creak once and fall still. Stars appear over the ellipse like a ring of distant lamps. The sand below lies flat and pale. You breathe in the quiet. The great place empties of noise and heat, and your thoughts loosen, drifting towards sleep. Chapter 7. Voices in Chains. You hear the creak of hinges in the Roman Empire Forum's slave market. Dawn light spills onto marble steps where merchants unpack their goods. Only these goods are people. Men, women and children stand barefoot on stone, chained together. Chalkboards hang from necks, listing age, origin, skills, price. The auctioneer calls with a clear voice. Bidders cluster beneath striped awnings, raising fingers discreetly. An older Greek scholar, grey in beard, lifts his chain slightly when a buyer examines him. A Syrian girl keeps eyes on her toes. A Gaulish youth flexes arms, forced to show muscle tone. You watch a family separated. The father is sent one way, bought by a stonemason. The mother is taken by a matron to serve in a kitchen. The child cries, tugging against chains, but an assistant pulls him toward another stall. No one stops it. The crowd barely notices. Nearby, scribes record each sale on wax tablets. They write the buyer's name, the slave's origin, and final price. Coins clink into a chest guarded by soldiers. Behind the platform, enslaved porters carry buckets of water to keep the crowd cool. Sweat stains tunics, and the air hums with flies. Some wear collars of iron stamped with inscriptions. Fugitive, return to Caius of Rome, reward promised. You see one man's neck rubbed raw beneath the band. Another collar is newer, still polished. A woman shifts her shoulders constantly, unable to forget the ring that declares her body is owned. In the corner, a philosopher speaks with chains on his wrists. His voice is calm, instructive. He explains logic to a young Roman who bought him for his mind. Wisdom flows freely, though his body cannot. Even thoughts are property when bought under the law, folded into a household. You walk away and find a workshop. Here, enslaved men bend over anvils, sparks showering from iron hammered thin. Another turns the wheel of a lathe, shaving wood into smooth spindles. Dust coats his hands. Overseers stand with rods, ready to strike if tools falter. Work is constant rhythm. Down a narrow lane a bakery glows. The enslaved turn millstones powered by mules, grinding grain into flour. Boys carry baskets of dough to hot ovens. The heat scalds their cheeks, but they do not pause. By mid-morning, carts loaded with loaves roll out into streets, feeding a hungry city. In another house, scribes, enslaved secretaries, dip reed pens in ink. They copy contracts on papyrus, file scrolls, tally accounts. The master dictates quickly, and they chase his words with steady hands. Their Greek and Latin blend together like ink stains, flowing in silence. Their handwriting is elegant, but unacknowledged. The fields beyond the city belong to vast estates. Latifundia stretch over hills where lines of workers bend in sum. Enslaved men cut grain with sickles, piling sheaves into wagons. Overseers ride horses along rows shouting orders. Dust swirls around legs, and heat presses like a hand upon the earth. Closer to the villa, vineyards spread in long lines. Enslaved women prune vines and tie shoots with twine. Others tread grapes in stone vats, purple juice splashing up their shins. The scent of fermentation fills the courtyard. Amphorae wait in rows sealed with wax, marked with the year of harvest. Olive groves whisper with cicadas. Boys climb ladders to strip branches into baskets. Men feed oil presses with baskets of fruit, twisting beams by hand. Golden liquid drips slowly into clay jars. Labor is endless. Every sip of oil on a patrician's bread is drawn from bodies bent in toil. You pass a road crew. Men in chains break rock with picks. Sweat pours down arms, backs glisten. Overseers shout as stones are fitted into place. Dust rises like smoke, covering skin and lungs. The roads carry legions, merchants, emperors, but their foundation is human labor hidden beneath cartwheels. In a quarry, the crash of iron on marble resounds. Blocks groan as they're levered out. Men strain on ropes, hauling stone upward. Dust blinds their eyes, and lungs ache from fragments. Slaves cut monuments that proclaim Roman greatness, yet no one carves their names. The stone speaks, but not for them. At night, some sing. In cramped quarters, voices rise softly, songs in Punic, Thracian, Greek. Egyptian. Languages mingle like threads in a loom. A tune learned from mothers, words remembered from rivers far away. The overseer frowns but does not silence it, for the sound is low, more hum than cry. Others whisper. Plans of escape pass like sparks. Someone knows a hidden path. Another speaks of pirates who free runaways. Another warns of crucifixion if caught. Fear and hope weigh the same. Chains clink as men shift on straw lying awake, staring at a ceiling black with smoke and time. A woman nurses a child born in bondage. She hums while rocking him against her shoulder. His future is already written, sold, hired, or passed to heirs. Yet her song is steady, as if to write another fate through lullaby. Her face is tired, but her arms are firm. In the villa courtyard, enslaved children play when not ordered to work. They roll hoops, toss bones, laugh until called back. A boy carries a tray of figs, a girl balances a pitcher. Childhood is measured in stolen breaths between tasks. Joy flickers brief before another command breaks it apart. One man wins trust and carries keys to storerooms. He is watched closely, yet allowed to move freely. Authority is a strange gift. He may strike others, but remains property himself. His back is branded with an old mark, and his hand trembles when locking the master's granary at dusk. Festivals bring spectacle. Enslaved men carry torches, light garlands, prepare altars. Women grind incense, dress children in wreaths. They smile for the crowd, but return to silence once drums fade. Celebration is permitted, but never freedom. Even joy is rationed, measured by another's command, then reclaimed by the overseer's voice. You reflect on voices rising in courts. Rare petitions exist, scratched into tablets, begging magistrates for release from cruel masters. Few succeed. The law mostly speaks for the owner, yet the written words survive, echoing centuries later, fragile but stubborn, a plea carved in wax, still carrying human breath. Later the city quiets. Lamps burn low in villas. In the streets, footsteps scatter. Enslaved porters carry water buckets to fountains, shadows stretching across stone. The Tiber flows black under moonlight. Dogs bark distantly. You feel the hush of countless lives bound, yet breathing together under the same silent sky. And slowly, as you listen, the sound of chains fades into stillness. Stars appear like scattered coins above tiled rooftops. The world softens. Voices sink into memory. You lie back in the dark, hearing only your breath. Sleep gathers gently, carrying you beyond the reach of command. Chapter 8. Manumission and Hope. You stand at the doorway of a cramped Roman workshop at dawn. A grey-haired man folds a tunic carefully into a chest, tying it with twine. On the lid he has scratched two names, the one he wore in bondage and the one he received the day he was freed. Manumission was the thin road out. It came by price saved, coin by coin, by a master's whim, by testament at death, by public ceremony with magistrates, not escape, but a change of chains, obligations owed, deference required, a patron watching. Yet, to step across was to breathe. In the forum's shade, a small crowd gathers for a formal freeing. The master grips a slave's shoulder lightly. A lictor raises the vindictor, the little rod of law. A praetor nods. The rod touches the bowed head. A formula is spoken. The man straightens, blinking as if from water. A citizen's cap, the felt Peleus, is set on his hair. A tablet recording the act is shown to witnesses, then rolled and sealed. Applause is polite, brief. The freedman looks around, hands open, as though testing new air. The master, now patron, smiles faintly, already measuring future favours owed. Other paths are quieter. A name whispered to a censor, and written in a list, a clause inside a will that springs after death, a promise given for loyal service and finally kept. Some buy themselves outright, counting wages earned at markets by night. The gate opens, if narrowly. Freedom does not mean forgetting. The new citizen keeps the former master's names, praenomen and nomen, like a stamp, then bears his old slave name as a cognomen. A household manumitted together makes a cluster of similar names around a patron's doorway, a small forest of identities grafted onto one trunk. The legal cords remain. The freedman owes operae, set days of labour when called, and obsequium, respect, and must attend the patron when summoned. Insolence can cost inheritance, ingratitude can unravel promises. Yet beneath duty there is pride. To walk without permission, to hire one's own, to hold a key that is one's own. Restrictions persist. Many offices are closed to the freed. The theatre's seats remind them of rank. The army's eagle is not for them. But their children, born free, may rise. A father who once wore an iron collar stares at a boy learning to write his letters clean and straight. You visit a small shop near the Sabora, its sign squeaking in the wind. Inside, a freedman barber scrapes a jaw smooth with a sharp bronze razor. He learned hands in bondage, now sells them by the hour. On the wall, a portrait shows him upright, tools displayed like trophies. Across the alley, a freed woman laundress turns a paddle in a vat, beating tunics white with ash and urine. Her forearms are corded with work. She laughs with another woman about stubborn stains and stubborn husbands. Each Friday, she lays a coin before a small shrine for Mercury, who favours traders. At the river wharves, a freedman customs agent counts amphorae of oil and wine. He tallies, seals, and signs with a precise hand the patron's name abbreviated after his own. A boy, his apprentice, copies the marks, tongue between teeth. Prosperity accumulates in ledgers first, then in tiled roofs and lanterns. In a cemetery outside the gate, stone speaks cleanly. A stele shows a couple side by side, names carved deep, both labelled Libertus and Liberta, freedman and freedwoman. Below, a line. He made me free. We made each other happy. Another stone shows two clasped hands, the grip of fidelity. Inscriptions tell stories otherwise swallowed. A baker thanks his patron for manumission and the use of a bakery. A midwife praises the goddess for a safe crossing into liberty. A teacher of boys records the purchase of his own son and the day he set the boy free in turn. Not all hopes survive. Laws draw fences. The lex alia sentia frowns on freeing the very young or newly bought. The lex fufia caninia limits how many can be freed in a will. Numbers are counted like measures of grain. Mercy, administered by statute, is still measured carefully. Still, some prosper. You hear of a freedman who ran a shipping firm, his initials stamped on amphorae found in distant ports. Another curated a library for a senator, then opened a public reading room of his own. Wealth opens doors softly, even where law keeps a hand on the latch. In a courtyard workshop, a freed potter turns clay on a wheel, the vessel rising from mud under steady hands. His wife, also freed, glazes bowls and lists orders aloud. Their daughter holds the stylus, copying names into wax. The kiln breathes like a sleeping animal, warm as possibility. At noon, a patron arrives with attendants, tasting a jar of oil owed as service. Polite words hide old boundaries. The freedman bows, smiles, and closes his ledger after the visit. He has fulfilled the operae promised at manumission. The rest of the day and the profit are his. On feast days, the freed gather at shrines to the Lars Augusti, leaving small cakes and garlands. They stand straighter than before, talking circles around futures, marriages, apprenticeships, dowries. Someone speaks of buying a cousin out of a farm's barracks. The wish hovers like incense and clings to hair and cloth. In the theatre, seating reminds them who sits where. In the bath, stairs linger a heartbeat too long. An insult arrives like a pebble, libertine, upstart. The freedman swallows it, counting to 4, remembering the pileus on his head, the rod on his hair, the first breath he took as his own. Sometimes the cord tightens. A patron demands deference beyond custom. A freedwoman refuses and is cut from a will. A court hears it, tablets unrolled, signatures weighed, promises compared. Even here, the former master's shadow lies long across the floor. The law writes compromise in neat, small letters, and yet memory builds like brick. A guild of freedmen sets a plaque on a wall naming its officers. A chorus of freedwomen funds a lamp for a temple. A row of shops pays for paving along the street. The city absorbs these acts the way stone takes sun. At home, a freedman opens a chest and lifts his collar. Iron thinned by years of use, nameplate dulled. He keeps it as proof and warning. He sets it back and closes the lid. His son asks what it is. He answers softly, "A thing I do not wear anymore." Evening comes slow. Lamps bloom along the street. A woman places a loaf on the household altar and touches the flame with 2 fingers. Neighbors' voices drift like low water. Obligations will resume tomorrow. Names will still weigh what they weigh. But tonight the door bar slides into place from the inside. Night deepens. The city's rumble ebbs to a hum, and the Tiber glides black and patient beneath bridges. You imagine hundreds of small rooms where freed hands rest open on blankets. Breath slows. The cap hangs from a peg. The old name sleeps on the tongue. Darkness folds calm as linen. Chapter 9. Philosophy and Morality. You walk beneath the colonnades of a Roman villa, columns pale in the morning sun. A senator leans on a staff, dictating to a secretary. On a bench nearby, a Greek philosopher, purchased long ago as a slave, now free, explains how virtue is the only true wealth. The villa is alive with echoes of argument. Stoics talk of fate, of accepting all as it comes. Epicureans urge the pursuit of measured pleasure and friendship. Cynics mock the pomp of both, declaring that freedom lies in needing little. Slaves pour wine while listening in silence. You hear Cicero's words remembered, "Justice is giving each their due." Yet the marble halls remind you who never received theirs. A household where hundreds labor without recompense still debates the meaning of fairness. Philosophy becomes both a balm for unease and a shield for hypocrisy. In the forum, teachers gather in shaded porticos. A Stoic speaks of Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher, who wrote that the soul remains unconquered if it chooses. Beside him, an Epicurean insists that pain and fear are to be avoided, happiness found in gardens, not in politics or conquest. Crowds listen with half an ear, more concerned with merchants' cries and law courts buzzing. But one young man, leaning on a column, listens intently. His eyes are fixed on the Stoic's hand raised toward the sky, his mind awakening to the possibility that strength may come from within. In the baths, philosophy drifts in the steam. Senators recline while slaves pour oil, and talk turns to virtue and vice. One man praises moderation, another sneers and speaks of fortune's gifts. The enslaved anointer says nothing, though his life is the truest test of patience, endurance and self-control. Moral contradiction fills the empire like incense in the air. An owner quotes Plato while ordering a beating. A magistrate praises justice while selling offices to the wealthy. a soldier speaks of discipline while looting silver from a temple. The distance between words and deeds is vast. Still, some voices cut through. Seneca, tutor to Nero, wrote that kindness should be shown even to slaves, for they are men like us, born under the same sky. His words circulated, copied onto wax tablets, whispered between the enslaved, carried like embers waiting to spark in dark rooms. But kindness rarely outweighed custom. Tradition declared slavery part of the natural order. Aristotle argued some men were born for chains, others for rule. Romans echoed it, pointing to conquest, to spoils, to necessity. A million counterexamples scrubbed floors, harvested olives, carried water, and still the belief persisted. The temples, too, gave sanction. Priests intoned hymns to Jupiter and Mars, while slaves trimmed lamps and swept altars. Piety did not include liberation. Sacrifice of cattle pleased the gods, but manumission was left to law and master's will. Holiness coexisted with cruelty in ritual silence. In quieter corners, small cults whispered otherwise. Followers of Isis welcomed the enslaved into brotherhood. Early Christians proclaimed that in Christ there was neither slave nor free. In catacombs beneath Rome, painted fish and loaves marked a fellowship that cut across station, though above ground the lash still fell. Philosophy sometimes gave courage to endure. A slave beaten for dropping a dish might recall Epictetus, himself once enslaved. "You may fetter my leg, but not even Zeus can conquer my will." In such words lay defiance disguised as calm acceptance, armor forged from thought itself. Others found escape in ritual. A man newly freed lit incense before the household gods, thanking them for passage. A woman touched the lares at the crossroads, asking for protection against hunger. Not reason but devotion soothed her fears, giving meaning where philosophy offered only logic. Writers immortalized the paradox. Juvenal mocked aristocrats who preached temperance while drowning in wine. Martial penned epigrams about masters whose dogs ate better than their servants. Satire became the conscience of Rome, biting at its own hypocrisy with laughter sharper than steel. On marble tombs, epitaphs spoke plainer truths. He was a good man, she was faithful, they lived with dignity. The freed and enslaved alike hoped that, in death, character would be remembered more than chains. Stone, not speech, bore the weight of moral witness. Festivals brought both joy and distortion. During Saturnalia, roles were briefly reversed. Masters served, slaves feasted. For a week, laughter filled halls, insults flew freely, and shackles seemed light. Yet when candles guttered, order returned, and the jest revealed its cruelty. Liberty granted as play only deepened bondage. The philosophers debated whether virtue required freedom. Some said yes, that only the free could choose the good. Others replied that the soul, being divine, was always free, even in chains. For those in bondage, such claims were not abstractions but lifelines, a way to claim dignity within suffering. Children repeated lessons copied in wax. Justice is fairness. Temperance is balance. Courage is endurance. Yet they learned these words while slaves stood at their backs, correcting posture, fetching books, cleaning ink stains. The contradictions seeped in early, an unspoken knowledge that morality bent under the weight of power. Even emperors wrestled with these questions. Marcus Aurelius wrote of compassion, of accepting wrong without anger, of treating men justly. Yet legions under his command dragged prisoners from wars into markets to be sold. His meditations glowed with wisdom, even as his empire ran on forced labor. Philosophy, then, was both mirror and mask. It revealed Rome's conscience while hiding its compromises. It gave the enslaved hope and endurance, even as it gave the elite excuses for domination. In between, ordinary men and women borrowed fragments, phrases, maxims, prayers, to carry them through the burdens of each day. Evening settles. The forum empties, teachers fall silent, lamps are lit in porticos. In the hush, you hear the last echo of a Stoic's voice. The soul is free if it chooses. The words drift like smoke, rising toward the stars, and for a moment they feel true. Night deepens. The city exhales. From mansions to taverns, from cellars to villas, voices fade to murmurs. Some sleep peacefully, others uneasily. Yet everywhere, the search for meaning continues, whether in reason, ritual, or rebellion. As darkness gathers, thought itself becomes a refuge, soft as a lullaby. Chapter 10. Decline and Legacy. The centuries pass, and cracks widen in Rome's foundation. Armies once unstoppable now falter. Wealth drains from the provinces, yet still the villas remain. Still the fields echo with the cries of the enslaved. The system is too entrenched, too profitable, to vanish quickly. Its shadow stretches long. On latifundia estates, chained labor continues to feed the empire, but revolt simmers beneath the soil. Whispers spread between huts, news of rebellions in Sicily, of Spartacus in Italy. The lash still bites, yet hope lingers that one day bonds might be broken by fire and steel. Spartacus, the gladiator turned rebel, carved his name into memory. His army of slaves shook Rome itself, defeating legion after legion. For a brief moment, chains shattered, fear changed sides, and Rome trembled. Yet the rebellion ended in crucifixions along the Appian Way, a line of agony stretching for miles. The lesson Rome drew was not compassion, but caution. Laws tightened, patrols increased, punishments grew harsher. The state feared nothing more than the enslaved, remembering their strength. Yet no amount of brutality could erase the knowledge that for a time the powerless had nearly overturned the world's mightiest power. Meanwhile, philosophy bent itself to justify the system. Aristotle's old arguments resurfaced, repeated in Senate speeches and teachers' scrolls. Some men, they claimed, were born for chains, others for command. Tradition hardened into doctrine. The suffering of millions was written off as nature's order, as though cruelty were destiny. And yet, voices of doubt persisted. Seneca's words survived, as did whispers from the cults of equality. Early Christians, growing in numbers, preached that slave and master alike were brothers in God's eyes. This dangerous notion spread quietly, carried in letters and sermons, soft but unyielding as water against stone. In time, the empire itself frayed. Armies turned on each other, emperors fell by the sword, provinces broke away. Amidst the chaos, slavery did not vanish, but its scale shifted. Villas collapsed, fields went untended, and the constant influx of war captives slowed. The system weakened, though it did not die. As centuries turned, the Middle Ages inherited fragments of Rome's legacy. Serfdom replaced slavery in many lands. Bondage reshaped, but not erased. Chains turned into obligations to land and lord. Freedom remained elusive for the many. Privilege remained hoarded by the few. The pattern endured, only its form changed. Still, Rome's grandeur dazzled later generations. Poets praised its roads, its aqueducts, its laws. Emperors were remembered as marble statues, not as men complicit in human misery. The story of Rome was retold as triumph, while the voices of the enslaved, millions strong, were buried under centuries of silence. Yet fragments endure. In graffiti, in epitaphs, in scattered documents, the enslaved left their marks. A scratched plea on a wall, a tombstone for a freedman, a household account naming those who labored unseen. These faint traces remind us that beneath the monuments lived countless lives, each with dignity, each deserving freedom. Modern scholars piece these fragments together, sifting through ruins, reconstructing the scale of suffering. Numbers emerge, 1 in 3, 1 in 2, enslaved in Italy at Rome's height. The statistics shock, but behind each digit lies a person, a name, a body, a life stolen for another's comfort. The legacy of Roman slavery influenced systems that came after. The very idea of people as property, justified by conquest or birth, echoed into later centuries. Plantation slavery in the Americas, chains across oceans, rationalized by philosophy and law, it all carried Rome's shadow. The empire's cruelty became humanity's inheritance, but history also carries seeds of resistance. Spartacus, Epictetus, nameless rebels in fields and kitchens. These figures endured in memory. Their courage proved that domination was never total, that even in chains the human spirit strained against its bonds. The story of slavery is not only of oppression but of defiance. Today, when we walk through Roman ruins, we see arches, amphitheaters, mosaics glowing in museums. Rarely do we think of the hands that built them, but every stone was touched by the enslaved, every road walked by those who had no choice. The beauty of Rome was built on suffering. This knowledge alters how we gaze upon marble statues and triumphal arches. They are no longer merely art, but monuments of inequality. Rome's glory shines less brightly when lit by truth. The columns still stand, but beneath them lie unmarked graves, countless voices silenced, their names never written in stone. Yet to know this is to honor them. To remember that history is not only the story of emperors and generals, but of those who labored in fields, kitchens, and quarries. To tell their story is to give back a fragment of what was stolen, recognition, remembrance, a measure of justice. As night falls in the city, you imagine Rome fading. Torches sputter, streets fall quiet, the empire's heartbeat slows. Marble remains, but empire is mortal. Even the mightiest systems collapse. Chains may endure for centuries, but no power lasts forever. Silence spreads, and the stars shine cold above the ruins. You lie back in thought, hearing the echo of a Stoic, the soul is free if it chooses. Perhaps that freedom is fragile, but it endured, and still endures. Even in chains, men and women dreamed of liberty. Even crushed, the longing never died. That longing survived Rome itself. Now, centuries later, you rest in a world where slavery is outlawed, where freedom is declared a universal right. Imperfectly kept, yes, but real enough that you are free to sleep without fear of a master's whip. That simple fact sets you apart from millions who came before. Think of their silence, their toil, their longing. Think of the weight of centuries borne on their backs. And then think of your own bed, your own liberty, your own safety. You are fortunate, unimaginably so, not to have been born in that age, in that empire. So let the lesson soothe you. Cruelty has its time, but it passes. Even the mightiest oppression fades, leaving behind only memory. The night is quiet, the air still. You drift towards sleep, knowing that chains are not your inheritance, that freedom, however fragile, is yours. And as stars wheel overhead, you are safe. The empire is long gone, its ruins lie in silence. The voices of the enslaved whisper through time, but your body rests unbound. Sleep comes softly, and you give yourself to it, grateful, lucky and free.